President Trump is now signaling an emphasis on economic pressure on Iran, as opposed to ordering a new military offensive as the war continues into its sixth month. The president told Axios yesterday, quote, "We are low-keying it. We are only semi-negotiating with them. We are just watching Iran with its huge inflation and the fact they have no money." Okay, Trump's comments come amid a new sweeping list of demands from Iran on reopening the Strait of Hormuz. A top Iranian national security official over the weekend said that before the key waterway can reopen, the United States must end its naval blockade of Iranian ports, lift U.S. sanctions, withdraw U.S. military forces from the region, compensate for war damages, release Iran's frozen and seized assets, and end its attacks on Iran and its allies. U.S. officials tell the Wall Street Journal that for weeks, Trump had been laying the groundwork to declare victory in the Iran war should Tehran fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz, even floating the idea privately to senior aides that he's willing to walk away without a nuclear deal. But now, given these new demands and what the UAE says was a targeting Saturday of one of its ships by an Iranian missile, that scaled-back objective has become more difficult. Joining us now is someone who knows a little bit about this, retired CIA officer Mark Polyramopoulos. He's an MS Now national security and intelligence analyst. Mark, this stalemate over the Strait of Hormuz is, one, only intensifying, but two, I'm very confused. Prior to this conflict, the Strait of Hormuz was open. There was no tax, there was no toll. It was open. Nobody controlled it. It was one of those shared international waterways. Now it feels like we are continuously talking about the Strait being open with some conditions. How is this going to play out from here? Where's the off-ramp?
So this is not really a good situation for the United States to be in. Look, if you take a look at the war aims, what we started with, we're at kind of, if you're a baseball fan, we're 0 for 4. The Iranians still have a nuclear program. It's been damaged, but it's not destroyed. They still have ballistic missiles. They're still supporting the proxies, and the regime is still in place. Remember, January 9th, that's January 13th, that's 209 days ago is when Trump said, help us on its way. None of that has materialized. Now the key issue is the Strait of Hormuz, which was open. There's the idea in the past was the idea of freedom of navigation, but now the Iranians control it. This is their nuclear weapon. And it looks like Trump is actually going to pursue a deal. He wants out of this so badly that he's going to pursue some type of deal in which the Iranians will have some type of control over the waterway. How he sells this to the American people as a victory is beyond me. This is a strategic disaster for the United States, but it's also one in which there's not a lot of great options. And so if you think about what's the least worst option, perhaps what Trump is talking about, given there's no military solution to this, perhaps that's what the United States is going to end up doing. It's not going to really read well in the history books.
Well, you know, the president's comments to Axios over the weekend about their semi-negotiating, right, and then this emphasis on economic pressure as opposed to military options. What does that say to you? And again, I'm still going back to the nuclear situation because originally, one of the explanations that the administration gave for the war in Iran is that Iran should never be able to have, nuclear capabilities. And frankly, Democrats and Republicans, they agree with that. I've worked for Democrats, and Iran is the greatest threat to U.S. national security. That's what they would say. But now we're not talking about Iran's nuclear capabilities anymore.
So that's why this is so problematic. I mean, the Iranian nuclear program, as you're right, you're 100% correct. This was a serious issue amongst multiple administrations. Yet we're at the point now in which Iran, if they take lessons from this war, is actually, and you see this actually, even statements that have been attributed to Iranian leadership, is that there's even more of a race to a nuclear weapon. If the Iranians actually had a nuke, we would have attacked. And so ultimately, I think, the region is much more unstable. It's much less safe. And the U.S. is going to have to deal with an Iran which has not been certainly defeated. You prick the bear. You better kill the bear. They didn't do it. And our Gulf allies are certainly now turning to other mechanisms. There's this new alliance now between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan. Really interesting. What's not in that alliance? The United States.
Mark, there's also this Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Yesterday, he rejected a peace plan for Gaza that was backed by the Trump administration. And this plan was also accepted by Hamas. The 15-point proposal had laid out a phased process for the disarmament of Hamas and the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza. When announcing the agreement between his board of peace and Hamas late last month, President Trump touted it as historic and a monumental step toward lasting peace and security. However, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who does face an uphill election fight at the end of October and is attempting to shore up his far-right coalition, just dismissed the plan, saying Israel's military will not carry out any withdrawal until Hamas is genuinely disarmed. Okay. The elections in Israel, I think, are very important here, and it's likely coloring a lot of what Prime Minister Netanyahu is saying and doing. What does it tell you that he's Prime Minister Netanyahu is publicly breaking with President Trump in this way? It's not the first time, but it's this is very stark.
So Henry Kissinger once said there's no Israeli foreign policy, there's only domestic policy. And I think he was right in this sense. And so, look, this is certainly part of the election campaign. The elections are in October. Trump has kind of hinted he's going to give Bibi a pass on this. But it's very clear that the Israelis, that Prime Minister Netanyahu has rejected a key kind of aspect of U.S. foreign policy, which is to push this peace plan. Let's see what happens as it goes forward. This was always a problem, of course. This whole idea of the Board of Peace was a little fanciful in my mind, because ultimately it's the notion that Hamas is going to disarm, the Israelis are going to withdraw. This is really difficult. Ultimately, I think we go back to, that famous Sharm el-Sheikh summit in which President Trump somehow said that this was, peace for all time, 3,000 years of warfare is going to end. That was ridiculous. That was, in essence, we got hostages back. That's it. It's a long, protracted conflict. I don't see it going anywhere. Certainly with Israeli elections in October, that's going to color everything.
And meanwhile, the people of Gaza, they are caught in the crosshairs. Mark, before you go, there's something else that you've been following that I want to get your thoughts on. These reports that the CIA has secretly set up a Cuba task force. I have been reading these stories about what is happening to the people in Cuba. There's an energy crisis that they're in the midst of because of a blockade that America has instituted, the Trump administration. What do you think of this task force?
So the CIA, and I worked there for 26 years, they don't set up a task force for nothing. What this does, this takes people, resources, attention away from other hotspots. And so that usually is done as a precursor to two things. One would be military activity, or other, it could be covert action, which is coup attempts. It could be influence operations, covert influence, lots of different things. But this doesn't occur if it's not a key priority of the United States government. It obviously is. It's part of the new National Intelligence Priorities Framework. I mean, the National Defense Strategy talks about the Western Hemisphere. We know Marco Rubio cares about this more than nothing else. One of the really interesting things, though, is that in talking to my contacts amongst the Cuban community in South Florida, they say Venezuela is not the model. They're not happy with that. They want full regime change. And so Trump and Rubio are really going to be on the hook here. Their campaign promise on Cuba was to see a new regime there. Let's see what happens. Amazingly enough, we're going to talk about a third foray into some kind of conflict. I mean, do we have the resources to do this? But I think it's happening. That task force would not be set up if there wasn't something coming.
Notable to remind folks that the vice president to Maduro is now the president in Venezuela. That is not regime change. Retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos, thank you very much.